I think the camera just froze on me. Aw, you piece of...
Hey, Drekkie here, and today I've got a treat for you. I'm reviewing the Akaso EK7000, a low-end action camera that uses some deceptive marketing techniques in order to generate positive ratings. Whoa, you're about to pan a product that seems to be wildly acclaimed across YouTube and Amazon? That's dangerous. Well, put it this way, the camera does take video at 1080p, but this camera does not take very good stills, and calling it 4K capable is an absolute joke. The end user might not ever know the difference between this camera and something higher quality, but from the perspective of someone who's used a lot of these devices over the last year, I have to say the value for the money on this one is just not there. The camera is a rebrand of a generic that sells for about $50. The 2K and 4K video is choppy and looks compressed to hell, and the still images are weirdly cropped and low resolution. I've seen a couple YouTube videos that wrongly state this camera is better than every GoPro and other action cam out there, and that just frustrates the heck out of me. This camera is not in the same league as modern GoPros, let alone the Sony X3000 or even some other budget action cams that are around the same price. So after seeing all of these positive reviews floating around, I was wondering what makes this camera so special. It's just a rebrand of a generic low-end camera, so how can the feedback be so damn positive? Well, let's take a look at the unboxing. See, the thing is, I always film my unboxings just in case anything special turns up, but I don't usually have enough to say to make it interesting to post online. This time was a little bit different. Okay, so write a product review and get a free gift. There's a picture of 5 stars next to it. This seems to really heavily imply that if you write a 5-star review, you're gonna get a free gift. That's dirty. It was at that moment I knew that this review would be an utter train wreck. And let me just say, if you made it this far, I do not advise buying this camera because there are far better options available for less money. Yeah, sure, the 1080p video is okay, but that's all the Akaso really has going for it. For a moment, I'm going to put this company's shitty business practices aside and focus on the actual camera's form and function, because that's the most important thing, how it works, right? Let's take a look at this camera from a hardware perspective. It seems to be based on the Sun Plus processor, which is like buying the generic store brand equivalent of your favorite food at the supermarket. And the image sensor that the camera uses is only 4 megapixels even though it's advertised as 12. Real 4K video needs more resolution than 4 megapixels. The video samples I am showing right now are in 1080p mode, and as I said, they're actually alright. The camera has decent color tones and exposure. It tends to be a little too contrasty, which means that bright highlights are too bright and dark shadows are too dark. But it's not that bad. Now let's look at the same shot in 4K. Oh wait, I couldn't actually get this shot in 4K because the camera froze up on me. I had to pull the battery to get it to restart, and I actually couldn't get it to film 4K at all. Finally, a little bit later in the day, it suddenly worked, but there was no reason why it shouldn't have worked in the first place. I was using the same memory card and a freshly charged battery, and then it just seemed to start working out of the blue. If anything though, the 1080p looks better than the 4K. Compare this to another camera with real 4K video and the difference becomes immediately apparent. The camera that shoots real 4K video has far more details on things like the trees, whereas the Akaso is smudged and, well, quite frankly, just awful. Back to the 1080p video though, as the sun starts to set, the video is still okay, but once it gets darker, everything fades away into blur. As long as you're in 1080p 30, it's not too bad, but this camera is really a daytime only shooter. Audio from the camera is what surprised me the most. It's actually pretty good. I can hear myself talking clearly even though the waterproof case is on, and with the case off, the audio is louder and clearer, but not distorted. Also worth noting, this is in 1080p 60 mode. Kudos for that cheap budget camera. Unfortunately, that brings us into still photos, and I say unfortunately because this camera is so poorly optimized for still photos. The sensor itself is only 4 megapixels, and it's in an aspect ratio known as 16:9. This is the same aspect ratio as TV screens and standard video. But the still images are cropped down to a 4:3 aspect ratio. That means that a lot of the data and information on the side of the still images is lost. The resulting final image is only 2.5 megapixels. Akaso tries to solve this problem by then resizing that small image up to 12 megapixels and claims that the camera is capable of actually shooting at this resolution, Well, no, it doesn't work like that. CSI's zoom and enhance is not a thing, and it's impossible to make details where there are none. Check out this comparison between a photo taken with the Akaso and a real 12 megapixel camera. The added details in the real 12 megapixel sensor makes a huge difference, especially around the antennas on this boat and the little fine details in the background here. The Akaso is just a smudgy mess. To make matters even worse, this comparison is unfair in the Akaso's favor. Despite both of these cameras being listed as an ultra-wide 170-degree lens, the Akaso is actually a much narrower field of view. Keep in mind that I had the cameras mounted on my custom-built comparison mount, and these photos were taken in the exact same spot as each other. Look how much closer up the Akaso's is. In terms of the battery life, expect about an hour of recording at 1080p 60. At least this camera comes with 2 batteries. So after all that, you're probably wondering, how can this camera have overwhelmingly positive feedback? Surely 900 plus people won't sell themselves out for a free cheap 32GB SD card. Well, here's the thing. The free SD card, it targets the average user, not one with technical skills or has used many of these cameras. So these are the kind of people who don't necessarily understand video quality, internal components, and their reliability. And I'll be honest with you, from the perspective of an average user who doesn't care about video quality, the 1080p 60 is actually okay. I'd even consider it acceptable if this camera was advertised as a 1080p cam. But there are far better cameras in this price range. The 4K video is poor and the still images are terrible. It irks me that there is so much misinformation surrounding this camera and so many false positive reviews online. You could just buy the SooCoo C30 for $60, which gives you a real 12 megapixel sensor and image stabilizer, or spend a little bit more than this and get yourself a real 4K camera, like the ThiEye T5e, which regularly goes on sale for around $100 US. But if you really think this camera is the one for you, then just buy the generic for half the price. Thanks for watching. I wonder if I'll still get the free gift for writing this review.